Welcome back to the Aviation RC Noob Podcast. You found us. My name is Joe.
And I'm Matt.
We're here to be with you along your journey and to share our experiences in RC aviation. If you have any questions, thoughts, or want to share a flight story, hit us up at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. Now, buckle in. Let's take off. And welcome back, everybody. We are on to episode 46, field etiquette and a little bit of history. This time not necessarily a plane, but a important component for some planes that were in World War I.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that, we got our what we've been working on, some community stuff, and then we had a couple comments come in over the last few episodes that Matthew and I want to talk about. Matthew, how you been?
I've been pretty good in general, but every once in a while I get a thing like my back says, "Hey now," and I gotta kind of take a break for a minute. So I had a little bit of that going on for a minute, but generally been pretty good. I'll tell you what I've really enjoyed is in America we do this weird thing where we do a daylight savings. And all of a sudden we get light at the end of our day, a lot more of it. So it's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to that. But I haven't been able to take advantage of it yet.
Yeah. So far it has screwed me up. Just the Sunday.
Yeah.
Real quick. I set my alarms for Sunday morning so I could get to the church to do setup and all that. And was dragging a bit, but got up, got going, was walking through the kitchen, and I looked at the microwave clock, and I was like, oh, I think I'm doing okay on time. Am I normally up and moving this early on a Sunday? And then got in the car, was driving, and I'm looking at the clock in the car. I'm like, oh, man, I think I'm actually like really early today. Normally I'm a little late, but I think I'm going to be like an hour early. I'm all excited, driving down to school where we have the church, and man, this could be great. I'm going to be there early. I'm going to have time to, I'm going to be able to stand there and wait for other people to show up. And I get there, the gates are already open. I'm like, I really thought I was going to be early. I walk in, and finally I pulled the cell phone out of my pocket, and I'm like, oh, yeah. Yeah, time changed. So my phone adjusted. My alarm went off at the right time. Yeah. But every other clock is off, which threw me. So
yeah, I put a little note right before we had scouts, like, by the way, it is daylight savings time. Don't forget. In case this is the first appointment you have today.
I just need all the other clocks in my life to be automated in that regard.
I know, right?
Because, like I said, I woke up on time, but thought I had plenty of time, so I was dragging. But
yeah, that's all right.
Anyway.
Well, so are you excited that you have a lot more daylight hours at the end of the day now?
I am, if I had something to take out and fly right now.
Well, we're going to work on that in the next couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, and that's my own fault. But also, with doing the Phantom stuff, the quadcopter, it's been unfeasible so far to try to do anything with it after work. Photography based, just because the amount of light when I get off work and I get my day wrapped up is just nothing. So perfect opportunity to fly a little more, perfect opportunity to maybe try to get it out and do a little something more. But I'm also still planning on taking Part 107 at the end of the month.
Ooh, have you got that scheduled, or you just finished your studies?
I haven't finished my studies. I don't have it scheduled. That's just the current plan. Okay.
Because as I understand it, right, we talked last time, I think, that you have to call up the FAA, and it's officially like a thing you got to go in and do. It's not. I don't think it's something you can just say, "Hey, I'd like to take it." You take it from home, and you're good. It used to be that way, but I don't think it is anymore.
I'm pretty sure I'll have to go into a testing center, but I don't think I have to call the FAA. I think I can just go online and find testing centers and schedule a test.
All right.
I don't know. I gotta look into it.
Yeah. Well, as you get a little bit closer, keep us posted.
Will do.
I'm curious to know. And now you live near an Air Force base, so I'm sure that there's, I'm guessing there's a testing center pretty close. just as there is one pretty close to here. So,
yeah.
But I know some people,
probably?
who are not so fortunate. They have to travel quite a way. So it's an event for sure.
Well, even if I have to travel a ways, it'll be in the state capital, which is an hour to most areas in there. So I'm going to be fine. One way or another, I'll get it taken.
Yeah, I got to do the same thing too. And honestly, as I keep taking my practiced FAA airman certificate test, I keep thinking, well, when I do that, I need to sign up for the Port 107 because they have a lot of shared knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Good.
And only slightly related, I sent that point cloud to you for a while back. Did you ever happen to do anything with that?
No. I went to go look for it, and then I couldn't remember where did you put it? Did you put it on the Gmail? Did you put it on the OneDrive?
I don't remember. So,
well, now you make me feel a little bit better. I appreciate that. I looked at how about this? I looked at the Gmail and I didn't find it. So, I'm gonna look at I'll look at our OneDrive here in a second, and I'll either download it or you can just delete it, and we'll next time you do one, I'll use that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, actually, now I think about it, it's definitely in the OneDrive. I would have dropped it into our episode folder.
The episode 43. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
just the main root folder. Anyway.
Okay, very good.
I'll
look for it.
Yeah. Yeah, before we get into the flying section, Matt, I know you got it noted a little further down, but I'd like to pull it up to this part, and then we can go from there. We can say this episode, as always, even though we hadn't said it before, sponsored by you guys, our listeners, but we can also say now this episode is sponsored by our patrons.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys. We do have a couple. We have not... I didn't think to ask if patrons wanted to be mentioned by name on any, so I don't want to say anything, but I'll reach out to them and see if...
For those of you who submitted and become our patrons... we really do appreciate it because that really helps us continue forward and know that we've got support to do what we're going to do. And like I said, you know who you are, so we thank you very much.
Absolutely. And that was honestly a real surprise when I saw that come in. So
yeah, it was
thank you
nice
guys.
Surprise. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So fly stories. I'll go first and be real quick because I hadn't really flown. I think I pulled the drone out one time to show somebody just to demonstrate a little bit, and then that was really it. I've not had anything to do with it since, because last weekend when this episode went live, we were playing D&D at your place, and then this past weekend was just kind of a veg out weekend for my wife and I. So
I thought you guys went somewhere. Either way,
no, not this weekend.
Okay, my mistake. I see it.
No.
Okay. Well, good. That was it. That's all you did. You just enjoyed doing nothing, right?
Yeah. I mean, a little more research into the 107, but yeah.
Well, good. How confident do you feel with it right now?
Let's just say I want to schedule a test, but I've got a lot of work to do.
Okay. Fair enough. No, really. I mean, that's a pretty good sum up. It's a lot to do. There's a lot in there, a lot to digest.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Well, considering I've really only been mostly watching that one video that I mentioned a while back, and just knowing that I've got more resources, I need to actually just hit the FAA site and see what official resources are there.
Okay.
So,
right.
But just been continuing to watch that one.
Yeah. Fair enough.
What Maytags or Maytars and Tatars or whatever those things are.
Metars.
Okay, there you go.
And it depends on what you're aiming for. But yeah, the meters are the meteorological automated data.
Look at you.
That's only because I've been coming very close to getting the 80% that I need to be able to schedule the FAA exam. For the airman certificate. So, and the all that stuff is a big part of aviation. You obviously need to know before you fly. You want to know what the heck you're getting into, which is part of why they have you learn it as part 107, because it's important to know where to go look for current, up-to-date, ever up-to-date information, no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good stuff.
All right. So what have you been working on?
Oh, I was supposed to work on stuff, right? Shoot.
That's the thought.
I'm just kidding. I did do some, but I really didn't. I haven't done a lot. I'm still working on the Marabou. I was trying to close everything up. I've got everything wired. All the connectors are connected. I've made sure that the power is going through it. I have not mounted the motor because I wanted to make it I debated whether or not I was going to make it a motorized glider or not. I guess technically it's not a glider if it's motorized, right? But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I haven't mounted it. And once I mount it, I'll be able to figure out which bay the battery needs to go to be able to build a hatch for it. And then it's a little bit more complex than just like kind of close it up and call it good. I thought it was going to be like that, and it just isn't. But it's looking really good. Like the wings are closed up, and I've turned on the lights, and I think I've uploaded to Facebook. I've uploaded a couple pictures of what that looks like. I'm really pleased with how it looks. I don't know what it's going to look like in the night. I don't know if the red and green lights that help me directionally are going to really show up well at night or not. So we'll see. So, but that's been closed up. I did take the the heat gun, to the P61 center fuse piece, in the center of the wing. And mine was kind of crooked, so I kind of readjusted it. And with that, a good and bad came of that. I did get it to straighten, but the front of it kind of relaxed and opened up a little bit. So I got to reheat it and then pinch it and then let it set again. And then
so by heating it, you melted your glue.
Yeah, remelt the glue.
Separated.
Right.
Okay.
But it also separates the paper a little bit from the foam underneath on the wing itself. On the wing. And so that part isn't terribly good. I'm not sure what to do about that, if at all. Right now, it's not really affecting anything as far as physically, like how it's going to perform. It does show up, but other than that, it's really not a big deal. So I'm going to let that go. I was working on some landing gear. I think I've got the front. I've got the front gear, the wire kind of formed, but I'm debating, because if I recall right, the P61, the landing gear folds. I'm trying to think. I think it folds back. I think it actually, I'm trying to think if it folds forward or folds back. I think the nose gear folds forward and the rear gear folds back. And with the way the nose is set up and supported, I can only really put the gear in the back, which isn't a big deal. But if I do want to make it true to scale, which I've been trying to do, if it is the other way around, I got to put some supports in there before I put that in. But, I'm making a little bit of progress with that. And like, if I can get kind of out of my medical maladies, I will probably have a little bit more energy to finish and tackle. I'm really excited. Oh, and the other thing is I had a couple comments about the motors being a little off, like they weren't in line with each other, which I did on purpose. I actually left them loose so I could adjust them because I knew I would have to kind of line them up. So what I did is I took a ruler across the base plates, and I kind of lined them up to that, and then I tightened those bolts down and made sure that they're all set. So right now they are all set, and I looked at them, from the side, and they are all in line, both along the face of the plates and vertically. So they seem to be in line with that. So really, I got to kind of glue on a cowl, put on some motors, get the gear in, and just to test the setup and the transmitter. So we're getting close. Getting a little closer. Just to do a little bit of work. But it wasn't a lot more, like what I had in my head that I'd get done by now. Yeah. A lot more than what I did. So, yeah, and that night I studied. Because I figured if I can't really build a lot of planes, I might as well do what you're doing, kind of get ready for the Part 107. And then I realized, well, if I get ready for my airman test, which I have to do anyway, I'm pretty much getting ready for my Part 107 anyway. So why don't I just get going? And so I did. And I think my last test was a 73. I need an 80 or better. So it's creeping up from, I think the previous test was a 62. So I'm learning a little bit here and there, picking up some more, but there's a big gap. So some of it was catch up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think that's it as far as building and what I've been doing in the hobby. Because it hasn't been a whole lot, except I did repair one of the quads I was working on. I had kind of busted it and I lost 4 of the screws. They loosened up and came out. And I was like, well, the whole top plate is off of the bottom plate. That doesn't help. And so I put some, Loctite stuff and found the new screws and put them in. And so I should be good to go to fly for a while with that. I'm looking forward to that. That's it. No, that's about all I did. Joe, has anything been going on with the community, which we want to let a couple people, some of our listeners know about what's coming up?
Well, I see you've got some notes going on here, so...
Yeah, a little bit.
I kind of seen where some guys were getting together. Kind of an impromptu build party.
Yeah.
So I guess that was a mixture of... Was that a mixture of Bilgewarie and the Hangar RC build-off, or what were those guys?
Yeah, honestly, in the last couple weeks, Bilgewarie had sort of finished. It was like the last hurrah, the last couple build days, right? So there was a little bit of that going on, and then Bilgewarie, there's a couple people, or the build-off by the Hangar RC, that was extended into the 15th, which is today.
Was it the 15th?
Yep, it's the 15th. So that is as of the day that we're recording, which is today. That's the last day. And I know when a lot of people got the notification a month ago, they were like, "Oh, thank goodness." I think I might actually be able to finish this up. So that's pretty exciting. And we've been
I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of all that.
Yeah, me too. I noticed there's a number of people who seemed to take advantage of the time. I thought I was going to be one of those. Unfortunately, that was not my plan. So, but the challenge is over. So the build off, for those who did submit it, congratulations in getting that done. That in and of itself is a pretty good achievement. And I think, now that that's done, you can kind of relax and think about what else you might want to get ready for flying season, and or like Flight Fest or things like that. Any kind of, I know our flying field has an event coming up in a week. I think it's a week or 2 weeks. Anyway, they have a fly-in, general fly-in, which is a little like, hey, everybody who likes to fly, get together, have a good time, a little swap meet, that kind of thing. So I think this year I'm finally going to actually plan on bringing, some money, and I might be a proud owner of a balsa something by the end of it.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I hope it'll be good. I know that whatever those guys are selling, that's usually pretty good stuff. So, it's just stuff they're like, I need to make room for something new. I'm already got it on the way, so I need to get rid of this thing. Which is good.
It's already on the way, so please take it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, that should be fun. I'm looking forward to doing that. Or at least trying to be part of that. Yeah, I think that's it. That's a big thing. And then other than that, we have a build night coming up, right?
Yes. So Friday, March 25th, 8 p.m. to 11 Eastern Standard Time. Standard Time now.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
I don't
pull up the world.
What is that?
Time.gov. It'll give you an idea. But yeah, so this episode comes out, that'll be on the 19th. So for the guys listening, or ladies, this coming Friday, 8 to 11 Eastern, we'll be doing a build party. Link to the Discord server will be in the show notes. So come out and join us. And if you build your airplane, you didn't get to finish building, or you finished everything and now you should think about what you want to fly in the summertime. Bring that, whatever it is.
Yep.
Bring it. We'll get together. We'll have a good time, just hanging out, building, and talking.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right, and we've had a few comments that in the last 2 months, so we really hadn't gone back and addressed at any point.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just kind of pulled some from the last couple episodes. It seems like they pulled some interesting comments from a couple of our listeners. Some of the guys you might they kind of comment regularly, but I think some of the comments they're useful. They're usually like kind of follow up or fill in information, maybe things that we didn't realize or something I think was pretty interesting. For example, let's see, Apis, Devin, he said he was listening to the last episode of the podcast. This was one of the ones with the LED controllers for the lights. He goes, I'm surprised that you haven't brought up the mud LED control board. I haven't finished the episode, so maybe we end up doing it, but ultimately we don't. I think I kind of allude to it that there are the Night Radiant has its own night controller, but the mud LED is actually kind of a companion to the LED controller for the Night Radiant. And what the mud LED has is it has a barometer, and it will turn the lights, I think in the fuselage section, red or green, and it will flash them faster or lower depending on how fast you're gaining or lowering altitude. So it acts as a visual variometer, which basically tells you how fast you're rising or sinking, which is important when you're gliding.
Yeah.
So I had looked at it now, and that's the thing is I saw it, but I didn't want to comment on it because I figured we can get into controls and controllers in a lot more detail when maybe I get a little bit more experience behind my under my belt. When I've kind of fooled with some of the Arduino stuff, I was thinking about picking up a Meta LED controller and just seeing kind of what's out there, what's possible. So, but that's an excellent thing. If you don't know about it and you're already kind of down this path a bit, and you want to kind of do some more advanced things, the Meta LED is an excellent choice. It looks like it's more or less a barometer breakout board with like a mini Arduino, like a Nano or a Pico or something like that. And it's basically a very small one of those. And then that kind of attaches to the general control board that you might have for your LEDs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good one. And I appreciate that, Devin. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that hopefully some of you guys out there might have not heard about it. So look it up. It's relatively inexpensive. I think it's like $45 or $35.
Okay.
It's one of those things that you can easily pull from one night flyer and move it into another next time you go to a different night fly or something. 10745 indicated, he said, finally got around to listening to episode 43 today. I was one of those guys talking at my radio in the car. He said, Wellingtons had geodetic fuselages. Water goes up before it comes down, so it would push the tail up first. He said the dam busters.
It's a solid point.
It is a solid point. He said the dam busters had to spin the bombs to get them to skip, hit the backside of the dam, and then cling to the backside of the dam and sink before it all goes off. And he goes, sometimes I wish I could be on the podcast with you guys. It's always a good time. Because if you think the geodetic fuselage is cool, you should see a geodetic wing, which we ended up...
Say geodetic for me one more time.
Geodetic.
Okay.
Why? What was I sounding like I was saying?
She sells she shells by the
Yeah. It was getting a little bit muddled, wasn't it? Yeah, geodetic. And that's basically that lattice work, kind of almost wicker basket shell.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked it up. They're pretty cool. So go ahead and take a look. Look for geodetic wing, and you'll be pretty impressed. It's pretty cool looking.
Nice.
All right.
Spitfire 76, our good friend Richard, said that last episode, number 43, again had some great content. Thank you. The adaptation of Vickers' bomber to magnetic mine sweep was a great choice for the history part of the podcast. I had no idea that it was used for that purpose. Neither did I. Yeah. Also, the topic of Express LRS is really interesting. I really like that it's open source, and although the extended range is impressive, I don't see myself intentionally flying 20 miles away, especially on a 3-cell 1300 milliamp battery. Hopefully we're not going, well, I don't know, with current laws we can't go that far anyway, but...
No, not without really powerful binoculars.
Yeah, I wonder if laws will ever shift to allow for that.
That's what they're aiming for.
Okay.
I mean, I really genuinely think that saying, like, you cannot do that unless you have the, what is it?
The remote ID.
The remote ID. Unless you have remote ID, in which case, you know, now we can all figure out where you are, what you're doing, and all that stuff. So, you know, as long as you follow some basic guidelines, here you go.
Okay, I can see that.
But you know, it just basically means that now you're still responsible for whatever you're doing. Not like you weren't, but you know, it's a lot easier to be not responsible for something 20 miles away.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, but yeah, continue on. I know that comment is a little bit, there's a little bit more to it.
Yeah, he goes on to say, also, as Matt mentioned, it does require the receiver to be connected to a flight controller which supports the CRSF protocol. At the moment, most of my planes have the RF5 Lite installed, and that does not currently support CRSF, although Flex Innovations did say they may support it in the future.
And I had responded to him to say that I appreciated his comment, and that I didn't know that it was possible. I didn't know about the possibility of the RF5 board incorporating CRSF protocol, and obviously thereby ERLS. I said, that's really cool to know that could be coming down the pipe. And then the other half is he indicated that it requires a control board, but they actually have just released, I'll call it a simplified pinout board. Like on the board, it actually translates the Crossfire signal to a PWM output for 5 channels.
Okay.
So essentially, if you have a standard plane with basically an on and off, and that's all you need, you can use the Crossfire protocol with this new module. And I actually have one. I haven't had a chance to install it and check it out. I have to figure out how to get ERLS, Express LRS on my transmitter and get that going. But once I do, I'm definitely going to be doing that. I'm going to be trying that out. Mm-hmm. I'll let you know. And then, you know, it isn't always all roses, but we did have a comment where a gentleman took a listen to the LED episode and was like, he said, bam, switched off 12 minutes in. Supposed to be talking about the phantoms and LEDs, and all I heard was photomosaics and software to extrapolate and stitch together maps and land images, and then red, green, and blue RGB LEDs. Yeah, that was enough for him. So, and I was, you know, and I was like, well, what the heck, you know, this is our baby, right? You know.
Well, to be fair, especially when I get wanting to explain something, I know I can get a bit rambly. And it was still talking the Phantom, so maybe it should have been I don't know. Some other word in the title, but you know,
I don't think
I know that I get.
He may have missed that it was when you were talking about the photomosaics, and I thought it was clear because I was following what you're doing. But if he kind of skipped ahead to see where the heck it was going to come up, and he heard something, if he didn't hear that was the Phantom conversation, you know, it would be very easy to go, "What in the world are you even talking about?"
Well,
unless you knew.
And I heard from another source that was not the easiest conversation to follow.
Okay.
I guess maybe I should have given you the benefit of that information. So apologies for that.
Yeah,
I was having a conversation elsewhere where about halfway through that, I was like, "Yeah, what's going on?"
So we apologize.
My bad.
Yeah, if it got anybody confused, we're really sorry. You know, some of it is I deal with some of that professionally, so I understood the lingo, and I wasn't thinking, you know, maybe, and I think we're going to go into it again with a little bit more of I'll call it a probably a more proper scholastic approach. But I mean, you're just talking about the things that you found out.
Belt.
What?
So when I got a little more of it under my belt.
Yeah. Yeah. And right. And we can explain it a little bit better, but basically, yeah. So that, you know, again, you were just kind of talking about this thing you found out that you could do, and you went and did it, and you're like, whoa, this is really cool.
And oh, let me tell you about this shiny thing. Oh, let me tell you about this shiny thing. Let's go back to this other shiny thing real quick.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so I responded to that gentleman. I just kind of indicated, I said, look, you know, that what you were talking about there was the Phantom talk, and some of the things that it could do. But, you know, hey, look, and I guess if you're looking to get into the podcast and in 10 minutes hear what you wanted to hear, you know, hear about the topic, unfortunately, that's kind of not our format. And I could see where you might be disappointed. Like, you know, it maybe the format's just not for you. I'm sorry you're disappointed, you know. And again, I'm paraphrasing here. And then basically, it kind of, you know, we went back and forth a little bit about, he wasn't trying to offend anybody or be jerky or anything. He just kind of, that's what came to his mind, you know. And he goes, it's actually pretty cool, you know, and I've got a drone. Wait, no, a quad, my mistake. Mine doesn't have any missiles on it. I'm like, oh my God, you actually listen to the podcast. So he said, no big deal. He goes, look, you know, one of those things, like, we're glad you tuned in and listened and gave us a shot. You know, we hope you give it another shot one day. You know, but, you know, maybe the format's just not for you, but we're really glad you gave us a shot. So it ended up on a good note, I think.
Good.
Instead of degenerating into, you know, rubber bands across the office walls. So anyway, good. I appreciate you responding to that comment, because I never see them come in. Yeah, sometimes they pop up, and sometimes
stuff.
Yeah, sometimes they get buried. I don't know.
Yeah. All right.
So what have you got for us today?
Yeah. Let's talk about something from World War I for a few minutes, and then we'll get into the main topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking through and I was trying to figure out what in the world, because you mentioned last time maybe talking about something from World War I, a plane from World War I, instead, where we've been focusing heavy on World War II and more modern era, getting back there. And I don't have a great knowledge of World War I era.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And so I was looking, I was like, man, what am I going to talk about? And I don't know anything remotely about any of these planes to start to approach the section. And one thing that kind of, I said, what all these planes got in common? And it is, how are they shooting without blowing their propellers off their plane?
Yeah, right.
And that's a legitimate problem. We don't face it so much today because our weapons are mounted further out of the wings. If they happen to be a weapon mount, or you know, they're jet powered, so we're not worried about props getting chewed up.
Mm-hmm.
But especially back in World War I, this was a serious problem. Now, what I had forgotten about leading up to this was that the machine guns on planes at one time were like turret mounted. So you were flying a plane and had this gun that you could swing around and point separate of the direction you were flying.
Mm-hmm.
But to mount the guns in line, so you were more of a point and shoot with your plane, you were then firing through your prop, because you had your gun set up in front of you with a crosshair, and you were firing straight ahead. So
right.
to fire like that would not risk. Chances were high you were going to blow your prop off your plane.
All I can think of is Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, and them in the World War I. And then of course, you know, when they wanted it to be conveniently dangerous, or you know, they would blow off the prop. It literally cut down the prop to nothing because they kept shooting.
Yep. And we may have to include a link to the slow-mo guys. They did a video on slow motion, the firing, and when it actually goes through the prop. So
cool.
What they ended up doing to fix this was the synchronization gear. They had to overcome and find a way for the gun to fire only when it was safe, the prop was not in the way. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I just wanted to cover it briefly. The inherent difficulty with that, there's a couple different factors. You've got no one synchronization gear was going to work for all guns. Given different firing rates on the gun, different muzzle velocity, different distance from the end of the barrel to the propeller itself. So if the gun was mounted more forward versus more back, that was more travel time, which, given the prop speed of World War I planes, may not necessarily need to be a huge problem, but then if you're going from a very high speed ammo to a lower speed ammo, you get into a problem. So they had synchronization gears, which some would refer to as a, how do they refer to it? An interrupter.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard that before, yeah.
Right. Basically the idea that it stops the gun from firing if the prop is in a bad position.
Okay.
And that's not, I won't say, that's really not accurate, as the interrupting implies that the mechanism is stopping the gun from firing, and that's not what's happening.
Right. It's not like there's a metal piece kind of jamming between the hammer and the ammo.
What's actually happening is that these synchronizations gears, and it's not quite that, but we'll get into that in a second. The synchronization gear was acting more like a firing motor, I think it said. Anyway, it was sending fire pulses or firing commands to the trigger, as it were. It was actually this mechanism that was telling the gun to fire. So you engaged it, it told the gun to fire. And it would send, at every possible, good opportunity, it was sending the fire command, and then when it was in a bad spot, basically the prop's coming, if you fire now, then with all the variables in place, you're going to hit your prop. It would stop sending the fire command, and then when it was safe to fire again, it would start sending the fire command again. And so it was the mechanism that was triggering the gun to fire. And what they discovered is that they were having to fire the guns more in actual single semi-automatic mode than full auto.
Okay.
In order to get the firing down. And it was actually some guns that had to be fired in a single shot mode, although I don't know a whole lot about that one.
Well, I imagine if it's a single shot, it's basically when that cam mechanism came around, it would fire, and then it would be long enough where it might as well be another shot, I suspect.
Well, the single shot implies that they were having to reload manually, like bolt action or something else.
Yeah, okay, I got it. That makes more sense.
Versus semi-autos, every time you pull the trigger, it goes off.
It's on a belt mechanism or something, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, it is continuously sending the fire commands. Now, what I didn't realize at the time was that would result in lower firing rates for these guns than if they were in full auto mode.
Okay.
Because it's very small windows that they're not allowed to fire, but take that in combination with most of the time that's sending the firing command, the gun is in the process of firing, ejecting the old shell, pushing the new one forward, pulling the bolt forward, or pushing the bolt forward and closing the chamber up.
Yeah.
So most of that time that it's sending that firing command, it's not actually getting through. And then once it's ready to go, it triggers again. And when it was finally ready, it was in a dead spot of don't fire because of the prop, then it would fire when the signal started again. So it could result in a slower firing rate. Now, how much slower, I don't know.
I don't know. A choice between firing slow and losing my prop. I'll take firing slow.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now there were problems with this in that they jammed often. They malfunctioned.
Oh, okay.
And if it jammed, you were just out your weapon.
Yeah.
It wasn't jamming so much that we think about, where the shell casing gets caught on the ejection method. Is just where the mechanism broke or failed.
Okay.
And so you were completely done. And then there was also there came issues with different types of ammo. So if you were firing regular shots and then threw in a incendiary or something else just to mix it up, or you had one type of ammo, then you loaded a completely different type of ammo, you could run into different muzzle velocities, which would throw off your synchronization.
Right. Yeah.
And could result in you hitting your prop. So anytime you were doing major things like that, change your ammo out, doing an engine overhaul, I'm going to talk about that, so you had to re-synchronize.
Okay.
So the synchronization process involved three parts. They had a component at the propeller to give feedback on the position of the propeller.
Okay.
This could be a camshaft driven directly by the propeller.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was a cam-driven kind of deal.
Right. Cam-driven or some other sort of drivetrain geared to the propeller that would spin at the same speed so that you could sync off of that.
Yeah.
Then at the gun itself, you would have a mechanism that would trigger the gun. So this was your triggering motor or your firing pin. I won't say firing pin, but the method by which it activated the gun.
Right.
And this is where you find out that not all weapons were even capable of being synchronized with a plane, just because of their inherent design and the things that went into it. Not all of them were capable of being utilized.
Was it no, that's a World War II machine gun. I was thinking Browning 50s. I'm trying to think of what the World War One, like they had a pretty common machine gun, and I'm assuming that's
the Lewis.
Maybe
you might be thinking of the Lewis.
Yeah, maybe.
There was another one that sort of was a de facto.
Right. I wish I could remember, but honestly, World War One planes are not my specialty. So. Yeah. Anyway, but my point was, I guess my thought is that those guys, those machine guns were probably the handful that could use this. So therefore they were on most planes, because the other machine guns just wouldn't work. So you just use them elsewhere. That's just an idea. I don't know.
No, you're good.
Prove me wrong. Send us a comment.
And the other thing that I forgot with, in relation to the different ammos and things, was if you had a faulty firing primer.
Oh, okay.
A primer that went a little slow, and so it delayed your shot.
Ooh.
It would actually cause the bullet to basically pass through the propeller at less than ideal spot. So a delayed shot could hit the prop. So they had to be mindful of that.
Okay.
And then you had a linkage between the propeller and the gun. And this could be anywhere from gears mechanisms with a push rod to a what's called a bell crank, which I'm not entirely sure. Bell crank and push rod. Those easily jammed or failed, broke, any number of things. Especially when run at higher speeds than they were designed for. You have an oscillating rod, a flexible drive. Some use columns of hydraulic fluid, cables, and then some actually use an electrical connection. So this is really a surface scratch on this, because I started looking through and I saw, wow, there's the Fran Schneider patent, the Raymond Saulnier patent.
Oh, wow.
There's Fokker's synchronization, other German gears.
Wow.
So it's almost like it's just the Albatross gears, the Schneider gear.
Yeah, every airplane manufacturer probably had their own version.
Every airplane manufacturer, every gun manufacturer,
yeah,
I don't know. Every plane style or plane had to have its own style. So, and then what's interesting here is I keep seeing these wheels, even though I hadn't read up on them. There's these discs that they're putting to the front of the plane.
Okay.
that I assume is dealing with the synchronization. So how they're figuring it, I'm not sure. But it looks like they had discs they put on the front of the plane.
Interesting.
That they would either slowly, I don't know if they did it slow or they ran it up to speed, but they would use that to synchronize where the bullet was going to hit. So they figure out how to offset the timing.
Yeah, I guess you gotta set the mechanism somehow, right? And it needs to be idiot proof, right? Because if you're adjusting it every time somebody comes down and you gotta, you know what I mean? It's something you just don't want to spend a lot of time with, but you gotta get right.
Yeah, well, you gotta have it right, and it can't slip. But anytime you do a major overhaul or
you have to fix it.
There's damage in that area of the plane. You're going to have to, So
nice. Well, awesome. That's something that's kind of been on my mind, and it's always funny when we kind of think like, oh, I'll just look into this one thing, whatever, this one plane, this one thing, this one mechanism, and you go, oh boy, there's a lot of information on this thing. Where there's no way we want to dedicate that kind of time. Not that we don't want to individually, but like in this format, like we're not going to get that deep, but we can, highlight, you've got a bunch of search words, key terms that you can look up yourself and find out more information. We're going to have a couple links. We got a link to a video that goes over this, as well as we've got a couple more terms, which is pretty fantastic. So, we'll get into it. Go look it up yourself if you want to see a little bit more. I'm kind of curious to maybe when we look at World War II planes some more, when we get back into them, maybe we can look at how that mechanism improved over time. Because I'm sure they did something.
Perhaps I didn't really look at it in a World War II
because
thought process,
right? Because not every plane. Most of the time, they move the machine guns out to the wings, right? If it had a single prop, right, a single engine prop, or if it was a dual prop, they'd put the machine gun in the center, kind of like your P-61 and your P-37, P-38 Lightnings. But I think there was still a couple planes that had a machine gun directly behind them, the motor and the prop. And I'm sure they use some sort of advanced version of the mechanism.
Well, I'll have to look into it.
Yeah. Nice. Guess Joe's coming back for more later.
Yeah. Give me an episode or two. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Yeah, we got some planes we got to tackle in the next couple episodes. Okay, well, good. I guess that brings us to our main topic, where we're going to talk about field etiquette. And I was kind of thinking, it's a springtime. It's we've had a build season, and now that we've got a little bit more daylight here in America, in the evenings, it's time to go back out to your field, and or even if you have been going to your field this whole time anyway, this is the time of year where you're going to see a lot more of your field mates out there, and it's going to be a lot more congested. Or even if, like you're Joe, who doesn't have a field that he goes to because there isn't one, but you do go to parks.
Yeah.
You do go to parks and you go to schools and places like that are also, public access, right? So in this time of year, you're going to get a lot more people out. So you got to be more aware of, I guess, your safety and your presence in the area, and how to handle yourself in those situations, right? So let's talk a little bit about field etiquette. And I'm going to start off. With AMA guidelines, because if you belong to a field, most likely it's an AMA sponsored field, Aeronautic Modeling Association, or not association. Of course, I have like magazines all over my house, and I can't find an AMA magazine anyway.
No, man.
That's okay.
What was the acronym you were trying to...
AMA. I should know this by the top of my head, but...
Academy of Model Aviation.
Yeah, Academy. That's what it is. I always assume it's the Aeronautical Modeling Association or something, but it's Academy of Model Aeronautics. Anyway, We'll have a link to a PDF that they kind of issue or they have available for people who are putting together their flying fields. And then what they do, they help sponsor like kind of how to put together a flying field, how to get a club together, and give you guidelines with which in this club, how to basically operate safely. Which, I mean, most of these are pretty common sense, but it helps establish a pretty solid baseline that no matter where you're going to go, if you go to one of these clubs, a flying club in America, you're going to run into most of these rules. Okay, they're going to be pretty common. I'm going to briefly go through them. And then I think we're going to talk about some other ones that I've seen at local fields that are beyond these basic rules. Okay. And we're also going to cover Flight Test Community Association rules, the general ones that they have. And of course they have some extenders as well. We'll talk a little bit about some of that. And then I think that's about all we need to cover for this time, but it's more to kind of get our minds around how to handle ourselves when we go out to the field and we go out to fly.
I have a simple rule.
What's that?
Don't be that guy.
Nice.
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy. That's right.
Don't be that guy.
Okay. All right. That was a good episode. All seriousness. Awesome. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
I got you.
So I think that's everything everybody needs to know. Let's wrap it up. So I'm just kidding. Well, let's find out, because Joel's rule pretty much sums up all the AMA guidelines. Don't be that guy. So the AMA guidelines say at the flying site, you kind of break it into like two things. There's like safety rules and there's operating rules. The safety rules are when you don't deliberately fly behind the safety line. There's usually there's little corrals where you go up, little stations where you go up to fly, and there's like a line that's set, usually in either with color or different height mown grass or something like that. And it's basically like that. In front of that is the runway, right? So anything behind that is like, that's the no-fly zone. So, don't fly deliberately behind the safety line. That's a no-no. That's a prohibited thing. Each transmitter must display the frequency. That's especially if you're doing, some of these are antiquated to 72 megahertz stuff, where if you're all flying the same frequency, you're going to have a bad day. Everybody will, right? Taxiing isn't allowed in the pit area. So basically, I forgot to mention that most of the flying fields, if you're not familiar with them, they're kind of broken into 3 zones. You have kind of the recreation. Usually there's a shade spot with some picnic tables, and that's where you park, and that's where the spectators hang out. There's like a general fence usually there. And then anything beyond that fence, between that and the edge of the runway, which is that demarcate the safety line, that's the pit area. And that's where you operate, you work on your plane, you get everything hooked up, you test directions of stuff before you actually go fly, right? And that's the pit. So you don't taxi in the pit, right? You don't move your plane while people are focused on their planes, right? So what you do is you bring it out after you've done your testing and make sure it's good. You bring it out past the safety line, you put it down, and that's where you start taxiing. Okay. It's strongly recommended that nobody flies alone. According to the rules and regulations set by the AMA, and strongly recommended by the FAA, as well as soon to be regulated, you have to have a spotter when you fly, right? They just recommend that you don't fly alone. We recognize that, not everybody has other people who want to do this with them. So I think the AMA is being realistic, but for safety's sake, as well as for being able to find your plane later if you crash it. Children shouldn't be allowed beyond the spectator unless they're under direct supervision of an adult, or they're doing flight instruction. They're getting flight instruction, I should say. I mean, maybe they're teaching somebody. There's a couple kids out there.
Nobody wants to see little Timmy run out on the landing way.
I've seen it. You know what I mean? Where it's like you don't really think anything. Kids like, oh, look at that. And they go running out in the field. Meanwhile, the guy that's next in line is going, landing, And, there's this kid that's like, nope, go around,
Yeah.
And, that happens every once in a while, but the rule is to make sure that happens far less than it could. establish.
And kids can't help it. They see something, they want to go investigate it.
Yeah, they're just running for it. They don't know. Let's see. Control and equipment shall be inspected on the day before the initial flight on each day. Helicopters are in a designated area only, I guess, because helicopters freak people out usually. I don't know, when you've got like a 6-foot blade whirring at like near subsonic speed, and this helicopter just kind of could get away from you pretty quick. A lot of people see that. I guess most people are kind of terrified at like a 14-inch prop, and this thing's like a 3-foot prop, you know?
Yeah.
It gives people the willies.
Well, plus, I mean, helicopters are just a different beast. It takes a whole different mindset to fly a helicopter than a plane.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think most people who fly, and I listen to some of the helicopter podcasts, and it sounds like, for the most part, the guys who really know what they're doing, they could bring it close and do some crazy crud. But most of the time, you know, they take off, they do the hover, they make sure everything's good, and then they go out a ways, and then they start doing some crazy stuff. And if you've ever, just look out some of the crazy things that helicopters can do, and you'll know why people get freaked out by helicopters.
It freaks me out, man.
It's really impressive. I mean, it's incredible. So I could see if you're flying your plane, all of a sudden you see this helicopter that looks like it is out of control and coming at everybody. When in fact, it's like, no, I'm just doing a TikTok. That's all.
A what now?
A TikTok. Yeah, exactly. It's a maneuver where they kind of have the boom go back and forth like a clock. Anyway, okay. So sailplane high start lines are to run parallel to the active runway, i.e. the stretched, taut 600-foot rubber band should go in line with the direction of travel and not towards the pits.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes. I mean, these are pretty straightforward common sense stuff. Direction of line of flight is determined by the wind direction. Flight of operations will stop during electrical storms. Duh. Models will fly only in pre-designated areas and will yield right of way to all full-sized aircraft. Again, big. It's a duh. Duh. So yeah, I mean, they're not really inventing the wheel over here. We're inventing the wheel. It's pretty straightforward stuff. And then they have operational rules, like most fields want to be good stewards to their neighborhood. And so to be kind to their neighbors, especially if they're running gassers or nitros, where they can be, it's like running a motorcycle pretty much. There's a no flying before 9 a.m. Only pilots and assistants are allowed on the safety line. It keeps the amount of people that are in potential harm's way to a minimum. Mufflers are required on all models. There might even be a decimal limit. That's might be a recommendation. And then depending on what site you're near or at, and we'll show some examples of it, there might be different limitations depending on where you're near, Testing of engines is to be performed in a specific designated area. So that way people know that if, you can travel most anywhere on the pits, but if you're over in that way, I mean, expect it's going to be loud and a mess, and, they're potentially wearing blades and things like that. So, and we have, we're in my field, we have two basically bollards or two pillars, concreted into the ground on either end. And that's basically when you're testing out your gassers, you put your plane up against it and you start the motor. That way you can kind of do the tweaking you need, and it's not going to go anywhere, and everybody knows where that is. It's pretty obvious. So,
okay.
Shelters may not be used. Shelter may not be used as a pit area. So don't bring and work on your plane in the area. People are relaxing, and it could be spectator filled. Pretty much.
Okay.
AMA safety code will be displayed when the field is open for flying. So basically they have like a written, placard that everybody kind of has, like as a reference. Flyers operating models must display the AMA membership card for easy identification. Pilots may make appropriate announcements when taking off, landing, or emergency situations. And honestly, that's where the etiquette comes in. Where basically it's just announcing to other pilots and people in the pit who are, potentially need to be aware that if you're taking off or if you're landing, that those are the situations where they come closest to people, right? So you just want to, and that's also where things can go wrong. They're more likely to have things go wrong. And then if there is an emergency situation, like you run out of gas or your power goes out or, an aileron doesn't work, you kind of yell that out so that everybody knows that the plane you're flying needs to take priority over other people's at the minute, And that way, hopefully... Go ahead.
I remember seeing some of that up at Flight Fest. We'd say, taking off from left to right or landing from right to left or... whatever it was, I remember hearing a lot of that chatter when we were out there.
Yeah, and that's part of that good etiquette. And again, it's usually you tell them, most of the time it's pretty straightforward. Like you look at where the sock is pointing, where the wind is coming from, that's the direction you're going to take off, and that's where you're going to land into. But sometimes it's a little iffy, and a defined pattern. And some fields, you'll see in some of the things below there, some of them have a defined, like you'll fly in the pattern and blah, blah, blah. I know a Flight Fest is a lot more chaotic, which is part of the reason why you want to say what direction you're moving, so people know what direction to look towards to see if you're close. And you want to yell at it, loud enough to go over top of any loud planes, and people need to hear about it. So don't be afraid to kind of yell it out. I know it seems kind of silly sometimes, but you want to make sure everybody hears it who could need to hear it. Let's see. Compliance with the safety rules is the responsibility of each participant. Like, it's not like, well, you're the rule, you're the club, you're supposed to deal with this. You're supposed to make me comply. It's like, no, you're a member of AMA. You're at this flying site. This is your responsibility. So when you go to a new field, especially if you're unfamiliar with it, you should know where first aid kits are. If you're by yourself, bring a first aid kit. One that has, and we talked about it before, one that has ways to close pretty grievous wounds, like a good knife wound, maybe. If a prop gets you, it's going to cut deep, and you're going to bleed.
Yep.
It's going to bleed fast.
Well, it's a nasty, it's not even dull knife cut. It is blunt.
Yep.
Impact, ripping cut.
Yeah, it is. And it'll be like...
in the case of our little props, those big props on the gassers, man,
it's still the same. It's still the same in the sense that it's a blunt force, that's basically ripping your skin to pieces. So and it's not going to be one, chances are it's going to be multiple lacerations at the same time, and one go. So it's important that you know that you have what you need to take care of that kind of wound. Chances are hopefully they're not going to happen. Every once in a while they do, and when they do, I don't think there's any been. Again, maybe you can correct me, but as of today, I don't think any deaths have happened because of RC aviation. So
that's good.
Yeah, it's good. I'm not saying that there haven't been injuries, but there definitely hasn't been, as I understand, there hasn't been any deaths. And then, that's the other thing is as part of your operational rules, you want to have the number for the hospital, the police, and where you can go. In this case, this is outdate, where a public phone is, but everybody's got a cell phone. But those are the kinds of things you want to make sure that people know where they are, In an emergency, you don't want to be looking around for it. You want to know where to go.
Right.
Well, that's about it. And then there's another reference to control line. I don't know if I haven't seen a control line thing in any, but they're basically saying, if somebody's using control line, there's a designated zone, you stay out of it. Yeah. So the FTCA, the Flight Test Community Association, doesn't have, most of their stuff is very similar. So all flying at the events or the locations must be for recreational purposes only, unless otherwise noted or approved. So basically saying, this is not a for-profit thing. You should not need a Part 107. By designating I'm doing this for recreational purposes, you disavow yourself of the need for Part 107, right? And as Flight Test Community Association is really supposed to be just like, we're out here to have fun. Never fly your model or aircraft in a dangerous or careless or reckless manner. Pre-flight your aircraft before each flight. Make sure it's good and good operational condition. That's where what they call it, check your crap. Just check that the surfaces are square and in line, that all the things are moving in the direction they're supposed to. I kind of make sure your prop is turning the right way, that kind of stuff. Never, and the same kind of thing with AMA, like never interfere with and always give way to manned aircraft. That's a big duh. In compliance with FAA, keep your model aircraft below 400 feet, AGL, above ground level. Keep your model aircraft within your visual line of sight. Well, that's not identified specifically for these older AMA guidelines. It is an FAA requirement, so as it stands. Special conditions. This is something they had a couple special conditions, which I didn't think generally applied to most folk. But one of these ones we just talked about, night flight. So it says, prior to your night flight or your flight at night, check for obstacles that may not be easily seen in the dark. And it indicated that you needed to have lighting that identified your orientation. It was clear, that you had clear orientation through your lighting, yeah. Which, we discussed last time. So,
yeah.
And then I went on a couple different AMA clubs and just looked at some of their rules that they posted on the thing. I've got looked through ours and a couple others, one in Virginia, and I think one in, I think it was Georgia. I'm not really sure. And this is the kind of thing you might see at your local club. And for example, ours has something very similar to this first one, because right around the corner is a church. So it says no gas or nitro flying before 11 a.m. on Sundays. Period.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so do all the other parishioners that go to that church. Right? Like it's loud. It's loud, and it is very distracting when you're hearing a sermon and the windows are open and all you hear is mm-hmm. And no time shall a pilot fly over the pit area, park area, spectator area, over the full scale runways or the designated no-fly zones. All aircraft operations must remain on the operating side of the published safety lines. That's a very clear version of the AMA guideline, right?
Yeah.
No taxiing, takeoffs, landings, or hand launches are permitted in the parking area or the pits.
What?
I know. That's, again, another, let's make this really clear, because apparently it wasn't when we just said, do it in the safety zone, man. Don't do anything in the pits. A spotter is required from May 15th to September 15th due to full-scale airport operations, and it's recommended at all times throughout the year. This club was next to an airport. And they had permission to do what they were doing. I imagine XJet on YouTube, he flies at Tokoroa Airport in New Zealand. He's at the airport. So they have an ADSB receiver and a radio tuned into the common. Yeah, I believe it's a non-towered airport. And so they have the common frequency that they have a radio always on, so they can tell when people are radioing in that they're coming close. Mm-hmm. And then, all RC operations cease until everything's gone, and then they're back in the air. No vehicles are permitted in the pit area or the runways or the walkway. As in, we caught somebody doing this and it's bad. Don't do it. Please don't. No more than 3 aircraft are allowed in the air at the same time when flying under normal conditions. And then they kind of indicate that unless that rule kind of went further and kind of indicated unless it's combat and there's a special thing, in which case everybody's designated their frequency. And obviously this was kind of, from some of the older rules, the way that it was detailed. But, some places do have a limit on we don't want to see more than so many in the air. Clearly that's not the case for Flight Fest. but a lot of places, they get really nervous. Nobody wants to wreck their plane. What I've learned is you couldn't do it if you wanted, but when you don't care or when you're trying to, if you're trying to, you'll never get it. But it's when you think there's no way that's going to hit
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it basically indicates, I thought this was a cute language on the keep your language polite and not foul. It says, we are proud of the fact that there are several lady members. Our wives and children are frequent visitors, and there is no excuse for bad personal conduct or foul language.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought that was worded well. And it says pets must be on leash at all times while on club property. No pets are permitted past the fence, defining the boundary between the parking lot and the pit, or on any part of the field used for flying. Pets are allowed in the area under the carport as long as they remain leashed and well behaved.
And again, these last ones were like
there's a specific
local club.
Yeah, a couple local clubs. Yeah, and every club has a different set of rules, and it usually pertains to what people have or haven't done, or they were worried about people doing at their club. Most of the time, there's also indications of like, hey, you can fly up to 3. If you are a guest, you can fly at our field at any time with a member. But after about the 3rd time, we ask that you get a membership. Yeah, that's kind of how our club does it. Other clubs do something similar to that. They just want to make sure that, you're not just mooching off the field. It costs money to upkeep this stuff. And, they want to make sure that you're at least being honest and upfront about it.
But at the same time, if somebody's in from out of town, they don't want to be hitting them for...
Yeah. They're like, no, man.
The year membership.
You got a guy. Come on. Come on and fly. So, yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's just the pretty much the basics. The etiquette is, call out what you're doing. If you're putting a plane on the field, if you go out onto the thing, you go on the runway, so people know that you're running out to get your plane. Taking off left to right or right to left, you call that out. If you call out landing, sometimes you'll call out what direction you're going, if it's unclear what direction you could be going. Some fields have a clear, like, we fly in the pattern. Some fields don't. Generally, most people kind of fly in the same direction because usually you're taking off into the wind and that's only one way. So they kind of do, like a stadium oval around the runway. You also want to call out when you're doing a low pass. If you're doing some stuff, you want to let people know you're doing a low pass because if they don't think you're coming in low, they might come out and just go out on the runway, though they're supposed to call out. It's one way to make sure that there's no accidents. And I think, those are the ones that I've noticed.
Well, when you said field etiquette, I guess I had something different in mind.
Yeah, what did you have in mind? What did you think?
Well, more just like interactions on the field. So one that's sitting in my mind is, I don't know you, you're at the field flying, even your phone board, but you're flying. And, while I don't really know, flying fields well, so I've not been to one, I've seen your videos, so I see their stations, like you'd be in your little pilot station flying your plane, and maybe I like your plane, I want to talk to you about it. Like, can I walk up to you while you're flying? And, yo, man, how's it hanging? Like, what you're flying? Like, yeah. Can I walk up to you and just start talking to you? Or is it a, hang back and, maybe say, hey, do you want to chat? Or do I just wait until you land your plane and then we talk? Like, what's the deal with that?
Right. We'll usually just be like, hey, I think you're right on the money with, you just, as you approach, you don't get right up on them and go, hey, and kind of jumpstart them. You just say, hey, you mind if I talk to you about what you're flying up there? And they go, and that's for them to say, no, I've got to focus on this, or yeah, when I bring it down, I'm happy to talk, or yeah, go ahead, man, just shoot away. I'm just having fun up here, or whatever, Sometimes if I'm kind of standing there by myself, everybody else is looking, but someone will come up and say, hey, I got a couple questions. I'll be like, well, come on, you be my spotter officially, right. That kind of deal. It's, you're right. That's a good point. It's the kind of etiquette, do you mind if I talk to you? Yeah. You got to remember, like everybody most of the people that are out there at that field love the hobby. If you've got questions, if you're a spectator and you've got questions, I wouldn't say ask it of the pilot who's flying the airplane, but if you got guys in the pits, you go ask away. They love to help you understand things. But yeah, be polite. How would you like to be approached? Think of that.
And I guess, any other examples that I would think of kind of follow along with that. Like, one of the things that popped into my mind was, you're standing there messing with your planes, and I walk over, hey, this is a cool looking one, and can I just pick up your plane? Well, no,
no,
you shouldn't.
Right.
I mean,
well, and that's the other thing is I've got my foamy, and you're flying your $10,000 jet. Do I throw my foamy up and try to get it in your way? It's probably, unless I want to buy you got to keep in mind, like, if I don't want to buy your plane, I fly mine safely, so I don't even think about jeopardizing what you're doing, right? Because, and that's the other thing is if you go picking up somebody's plane, but beside that being incredibly rude and kind of dangerous in a way, you don't know how much that plane costs, and if whatever you touch, you assume that if you pick it and break it, you bought it.
Yeah, you break it, you bought it.
Yeah, because I mean, it's otherwise that's really kind of rude. Now, most of the time, people are like, I don't, whatever. Some people don't care. But at the same point, you still assume that you're going to be paying for whatever broke. And if you operate that way, assuming that you'll be operating with a far more careful approach, and I think that's a good way to do it. And eventually you start knowing who's who and what's what, and maybe you get a personal relationship with somebody and they don't care. Like, no, go ahead and bring that over. But yeah, until you're right. Just be very, very careful with it.
I wouldn't even know what else to really ask you because I've not had a ton of opportunities to fly with other people.
Well, and I've been flying, and then somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to put this bird in the air." I'm like, okay. I'm like, would you mind coming down? Because this one's like, $8,000. Because it's like a 6-scale albatross with a giant motor on the front, and servos would probably cost $200 a pop. And yeah, I don't know how much time they put into it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't know. They're like, are you almost done? Because I want to put this in there and I want to make sure. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. But I mean, that's the etiquette where you're talking. Like, if you're uncomfortable with something, you kind of let people know, what you're thinking, what you're doing, and just keep in mind, like, some of these things, my foamies don't cost much, but other people's planes do. And you don't know how much time and energy somebody has or spent on what they've done. I don't know if you spent 3 years on this, plane you've got in front of you.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, you don't know which my foam board planes took me 6 months to build.
Yeah, the one you care about and the other one you don't. And you're like, oh, oops, I go with this one. You're like, oh, I don't care about that one. I'm like, dude, that was awesome. And you're like, yeah, but this one I spent 4 years on. I haven't flown it yet.
On a foam board?
Yeah, right. But yeah, no, and I think that's a good point. Yeah. I appreciate those questions, those questions or those ideas you brought up. I know we have a trash or trash policy. We don't even have a trash can out there because they don't want anybody like trying to leave a bunch of junk. It's like, no, man, if you brought it in, take it out.
Yep. Pack in, pack out.
That's it.
Okay. What about firing up a Barbie out there?
I mean, that's the thing you ask the club members if that's something you could do. And then if they say, sure, or they'll give you guidelines. I was like, well, yeah, anywhere in the spectator area back there. We oftentimes do that. Sometimes it'll be a table mount, like little Foreman grill kind of deal. Cause there's electric power, but most of the time, it'll be, a little charcoal deal.
Now here's something unrelated. Well, not unrelated. It is related, but again, I've not been to a field. I imagine there's a designated spot, and it doesn't matter anymore because we've not talked about it before, but I quit. But is there a designated smoking zone out of these fields?
Have you seen what a gasser puts out?
Yeah, but that's, you sign up for that when you go out.
I know,
there.
I'm kidding. Yeah, generally, I haven't noticed anybody having an issue with any smoking. I don't think a lot of people do. I don't think too many people, when they do, they're just doing their thing. We've never had an issue that I know about. If it's a dry season, be careful how you put your stuff out. We're in the middle of a giant, 40, 50 acre field or whatever it is. And so if it's really dry and it hasn't rained, like, please don't set fire to it.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, no, I'm really, you're outside. I don't see where there's a problem.
Okay.
Otherwise, be polite and be downwind.
Yeah.
Don't be puffing in people's faces and blow, hey, take this.
Yeah.
No.
And I don't know.
But I mean, that's
feel
just general common courtesy, right? Like, which may not be common anymore, but like, it's, if what do we say? What was your rule again, Joe?
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
I like to think it's a golden rule, effectively. If you wouldn't want it done to you, don't do it.
And I know that one's a little weird to ask.
No, it's a good one.
Like, it's just not a topic we've broached anywhere on this podcast before. And just because we try to keep things PG in general.
Yeah.
But as someone who used to, the thought did crop into my mind as things I could ask about as far as field etiquette goes. So
yeah. I mean,
that's why I asked.
I didn't even think about it. I was thinking more like, what are the general ways you behave at a field? Not like, I guess,
and that's
how to be polite. But
that is sort of where my thought process went when you talk about, we're going to do field etiquette. And then, I guess we got into a lot of the, set out rules as opposed to.
Yeah, some of the ways to be just a decent person to somebody else. I mean, that's pretty much what the etiquette rules
just
are.
Just be decent.
Don't be a decent guy. You have to be a decent person to somebody else. Like, be a good steward to the hobby. And, remember, the people that are out there all really love this hobby. Like, otherwise, why would you pay for the membership, right?
Right.
And they're, the memberships aren't cheap. Most of the memberships to a field require membership to AMA. That's not entirely cheap either. It's not terribly expensive either. It's not prohibitive, but it can be. If your entire fleet costs you $100, it's really expensive. All those other memberships are really expensive. But if you're the kind of guy who's got a $6,000, turbojet, the $200 or whatever it is, $250 all told, is not going to. It's a drop in the bucket. You don't even care.
Yeah. All right. Well, if that's it for that, we want to talk about what we're going to be doing and then get out of here.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay. I can go first, I guess. I'll be continuing to study 107 stuff, and hopefully, at the end of the month, take the exam. I gotta look into how to schedule it.
Okay.
And then we got the bill party coming up, so
on the 25th.
Probably be working on the 7 or the duck for that.
Okay.
And try to wrap those up so I can call those complete, because I need to get those wrapped up regardless. The duck, the 7, maybe revisit the glider for a few minutes, see if I can cut it open and do surgery to replace that connector so I can try it again.
Sounds good.
But then one thing you and I talked about, so this isn't necessarily by next episode, but it's going to be on the radar, is since we're both going...
Yeah, almost part of the community section. And it will be, I think, next time.
Yeah, I think next time we'll bring it up there, is since we're both going to Flight Fest this year, we're planning to do a Spitfire Squadron.
Yeah.
Basically, you and I will both build 2 Spitfires. They're basically going to be the same, but paint them up nice in podcast colors, put some decals on them.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have them for Flight Fest, and we said we wanted combat planes, so those will be our combat planes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talked about maybe if anybody else wanted to build Spitfires and do a Aviation RC new little mini Spitfire fly-in while we're out there at Flight Fest.
Yeah.
Did I understand that right?
Yeah, and I think I'm hoping that we get a hold of... I've been kind of trying to reach out to some of the flight test guys and kind of understanding better what's going on there to pick a good time for us to just do that. I know on one of the mornings they're going to have a World War I gaggle, and that's part of why I think I suggested doing some sort of World War I plane history. It's because I know a number of the listeners that we know are engaged in that challenge, and they're looking at World War I planes, and they're trying to scale it up to 6th scale, which is decent size. But yeah, I'm all about that. And I'm thinking, if you're going to go and you want to participate in this, I want to make sure we have we want to have stickers for the podcast. I want you guys to have a bunch. I think last time we were there, they said that we could put stickers up at the sign-in booth. So we're going to try to make sure we have enough to put up there. And then we'll definitely have some where we are and a way to identify where we're sitting. And then, yeah, if you come up and you say, hey, I want to be part of that, like we'll give you some stickers to put on your Spitfire and be part of the squadron.
Nice.
Just expect that the ones that we have are going to be using the colors of the podcast picture. The podcast icon.
Yep. Blue, orange, white.
And a little bit of black.
A little bit of black. A little bit of black goes with everything.
Yeah, it does. Well, cool. Yeah, we're definitely doing it. I'm excited. We cut out a bunch a long while ago, and none of us have put any together. So I think Joe and I are going to be pulling those out, and we're going to be putting them together. Maybe not this build night, maybe this one coming up, but maybe that's what we do in the next one. We say, hey, everybody, bring your Spitfire to the table, and we're going to be building our Spitfires.
Have a Spitfire build night. I like it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good one. And so that won't be not March here, but it'll be April's. We'll figure out when that'll be.
Sometime in April.
Yep. Sounds good. Cool. All right. I think that's it.
What do you got on your bench?
Oh yeah. What about my bench? Well, beside the new Spitfire, I'm gonna
two of them.
Guys, it's two of them, right? I'm gonna close up the Marabou. I really just need to not be tired when it comes around to getting to work on it. Going to button up that P61, which is really, really close. I've got about 3 planes. They're so darn close. I think I'm going to pull out 2 ones that are almost done. Oh, I've got to put the new motor on the bigger motor on the Don Carnage plane. If you're getting that duck, then I'm getting a Don Carnage plane. No. If you can do it before the kids go on vacation next month, then I will make a point that we get together on one of those weekends. And I'm coming down with the Don Carnage plane. And I'm going to shoot you out of the sky. or at least Don Carnage try it. Works. Which means I'll probably follow the sky on my own accord while you duck around the sky. That'd be fun. No, I want to get that going. And I got a couple other planes on the horizon that I had started a while back and put off to the side, and they're probably 70% done. So it won't be long. It'll be easy to get them up and running. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what's on my build table. It's kind of ambiguous, but like I said, I think I might actually get a lot taken care of in a short amount of time.
All right.
I think that's it.
Well, yeah, I think so. If there's nothing else.
No, man. Why don't we get out of here? Let our listeners go on and do something else today.
Sounds good. Well, guys, as always, we appreciate you tuning in and listening. Hopefully you've enjoyed listening as much as Matthew and I have enjoyed having this conversation. If you have any questions, thoughts, things you want to point out, anything like that, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com, or you can reach Matthew at aviationrcnoob.com, or you can reach me at joe@aviationrcnoob.com. Again, thank you to our new patrons for signing up and showing some love and support.
Thanks, guys.
We appreciate that. Feel free to look in the show notes for a link to the Discord server so you can join the conversation, hang out with some other guys building planes, and ultimately join in for an upcoming build night.
Wait, now if we have other listeners who want to become Patreons, how do they do it again? Where do they go?
You can go to patreon.com/aviationrcnoob.
Nice. Well, if you want to join that elite crew right now, that's how to go do it, and we would love to have you join us. Help us out. Make us happy.
All right. Well, there's nothing else.
No.
All right, guys. We'll see y'all next time.
All right. Bye.
And end.
End scene. I always find that very ridiculous. Hey, it's still recording. Sweet. I forgot. I'm like, I don't think I checked. I mean, I didn't stop it, so there's no reason for it to not be going. But, all right. I guess I'll hit the stop button and export.